Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another ALEC TV live stream. We're coming to you from downtown Atlanta at the 49th annual ALEC meeting. I'm joined today by State Representative Brian Harrison of Texas. And Brian, you have a unique background in that you're probably one of the few state lawmakers, at least here at ALEC that I've met, who has served in the federal administration at a very high level. You were chief of staff at the Department of Health and Human Services in the Trump administration.
I served at HHS under President George W. Bush as well, and then came back as chief of staff under President Trump.
So you have a lot of experience at the federal level.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to hear how you are translating your experiences, your successes there, how you can share that with the state lawmakers, what they can learn from what you learned and your successes.
Yeah, I'm very excited to leverage my background in the executive branch agencies, in the federal government, into my new position now as a member of the House of Representatives in the great state of Texas. And I think the biggest problem challenging America that almost nobody talks about is the outsourcing of legislative responsibilities by the Congress or by state legislatures to unaccountable, unelected officials in the bureaucratic agencies. So HHS, where I did serve as a chief of staff, people think of it in terms of healthcare or COVID, and it is all those things. But at its core, what it is the world's largest regulatory agency. And so the Trump administration was notoriously very deregulatory. And one of the things I'm most excited to do in my new capacity as a state lawmaker is translate some of these very huge, consequential, historic deregulatory actions that we took at the federal level, many of which I helped crafted, and do a state version of that to make sure that the people's representatives, the ones they can actually vote for, the people they can get on the phone, are the ones actually creating laws in the state of Texas. One of the biggest things that we did at HHS was we put sunset provisions on all of our regulations. And the way I like to help people think about the problem of the regulatory state, we have for the last year and a half had, I would argue, the most destructive presidential administration in American history. And I asked people, think through in your own mind, create a list of all the things that Joe Biden has done that is harming this country. And then I let people think about that. And then I say, here's a second question. How many of those things were voted on by Congress? The answer is 0. And therein lies the problem. We have unelected bureaucrats and executive branch agencies both writing and enforcing federal laws. So before I left the Trump administration, I put sunset provisions in all of our regulations where we had almost 20,000 federal regulations. They carry the force of law, but no congressman voted on them, of 10 years. And Biden, once he took over, went about trying to undo that. So one of the first actions I took was to form a coalition of my new colleagues and lead a coalition opposing Biden's proposal to let these federal healthcare regulations from the FDA and CDC burden Texans forever without ever even being reviewed. And so I'm looking to do very similar actions like that in the state level, because the second you have unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats writing and enforcing laws, we are moving into a post-constitutional era. The people's representatives, that was how we were supposed to govern by the consent of the governed. And if you have people who aren't accountable to you via elections writing laws, we're moving into a fundamentally flawed and I think dangerous future for both for our state and for our country.
I think, Brian, you have just articulated so well what many of us have we feel like we're kind of like, we see it, but we don't really know how to articulate it or what it is we're seeing. We just know that what's happening in our country, where all these regulations and prohibitions where are they coming from? I certainly didn't vote for that. You didn't vote for it, but we just don't really know, well, where's it all coming from?
Oh, 100%. And I'll just give you one statistic that's horrifying. For every one law that Congress duly enacts, 20 regulations go out from the executive branch, which carry the full force and weight of law. You can be punished criminally if you violate a regulation that no congressman voted on. The executive branch agencies can basically create taxes. They can create programs. They can end them on their own. It's a complete travesty, and it's anathema to the system that our founders created. So I'm looking forward to doing very similar things. You know, people talk about term limits. People can debate that for elected officials. The term limits I'm excited about is term limits for bureaucrats. Because I will tell you, as somebody who sat atop the world's largest regulatory agency, unaccountable bureaucrats who had the same job for 30 years, 35 years, they have more power than 100 members of Congress put together. And so one of the last actions I took was to put term limits of 5 years on those officials. It actually, ironically, was unsurprisingly, one of the first things President Biden undid. But I'm looking to do similar actions like that here in the state of Texas as well.
I love it. I'm 100% in favor of everything you're saying. So thank you so much,
You
Representative.
bet.
I don't have any other questions. Just one last question for you.
Yeah.
This is your first visit to ALEC,
It
an
is.
ALEC annual
It
meeting.
is.
Tell me kind of what your impressions are and how you think ALEC is going to benefit your constituents back home.
Right. So I was sworn in only 6 months ago. This is my second day ever at an ALEC event, and I've been extraordinarily impressed with the camaraderie and the willingness and excitement to share ideas that can help people not just throw rhetorical bombs from the sideline, but actually move the ball down the field to effectuate small, limited government reforms that focus on freedom and liberty and state sovereignty. And I'm really excited to be here to be a part of it.
Well, we're excited to have you. Thank you.
You bet.
And thanks, everyone. You've been listening to Representative Brian Harrison of Texas, and we'll see you next time on another ALEC TV broadcast.